Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to our next question. So what issues do you think that SCoPEd is trying to solve, and do you think it succeeds? So we're going to come to Erin first.
Hi, Kaz, thank you. I'm going to be focusing on BACP, and there's two reasons for that. One is because I think they have been most vocal and visible. I've hardly heard anything really from BPC or UKCP. And also because at the time of the first iteration, they were my membership body, and I know most about them, and I know most about what it means for counsellors and psychotherapists. And I also think it's like the SCoPE framework's likely to impact most upon people who are members of the BACP. So that seems like an important focus. The difficulty in trying to figure out what SCoPE, I mean, the very fact that we have to ask what is SCoPE trying to solve at this stage tells us everything. I think one of the real difficulties has been that there has been no real clarity about what it's trying to solve, and that the narrative has shifted over time. So back in 2018, a technical group member of the SCoPE team, a BACP technical group member, said, "What SCoPEd is doing is trying to prepare the landscape to enable us to respond in an informed way should statutory regulation appear on the agenda again." So that's what was being said in 2018. When the framework was presented to members, we heard a lot of, "We're mapping what is out there. We're not trying to set new standards. We're just trying to map what's out there." We all heard that in the BACP videos that went out, and that's kind of what the narrative was. There's something in the latest iteration which appears to be different to that. It says, "We started work by mapping competencies," and that SCoPEd tries to find a shared way of representing the therapeutic work that counsellors and psychotherapists do. And I think that's a really important shift in language, because it doesn't rule out redefining what we do as part of developing a shared way of presenting it. So I think that is another significant shift in what they're saying they're trying to do. And I think that's reflected in this new gateways thing that we're going to come on to talking about later. If the project is meant to unify the profession, I think it's fair to say that it's failed. I think it's been a very divisive project, and I think you'd be hard pushed to find someone, even within BACP, willing to say that it's been successful in unifying the profession.
Okay, thank you, Erin. So yeah, let's go to Jay next.
In terms of what I think it's trying, to do, I think there's a huge issue around paid employment, and you know, that Erin talks a lot about on social media and so forth. I think, you know, if you take some good faith, I think there is some people there thinking that this kind of scoped project might lead to more paid employment. I don't trust the NHS and IAPT that much. I basically think the NHS and IAPT have their own agenda completely, and counsellors and psychotherapists that aren't CBT, and you know, that's something to notice. You know, CBT has its own membership organisation that's nothing to do with this. They're basically being marginalised for whatever reasons. Well, there's lots of reasons, you know, that maybe talk about later. But I think a danger as well is there's all this emphasis on qualification when actually they want people who are less qualified, not more qualified. So I think in terms of the aim of paid employment, I think it misses the target there, really. And I think another aim is they, you know, if you take them in good faith, is to sort of have more credibility for counsellors and psychotherapists. I think the BACP and other organisations make too much of this. Basically, you know, if you know, in my everyday life, and say, you know, what do you do? I'm a counsellor, I'm a therapist. People know what it is. They think, oh, good for you. You know, that's a really good thing to do. You know, I mean, I think There's, you know, this sort of search for credibility. It's already there, you know. And I think they're also, in kind of like audit culture terms, looking for certainty and uniformity. Like, what is therapy? Certainly. How can it all be the same? Yeah. Where for me, therapy is by its nature completely uncertain, very multifarious, and I think that's a good thing. And we don't need to kind of be able to pinpoint, oh, it's exactly this. And it's always going to be the same. What social science called the McDonaldization. I think it's the McDonaldization of therapy. I think it's at least a paper, if not a book. You know, and that's what they're trying to do, so that all the hamburgers come out the same. And that's that's my view on what their aims are.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, Rima.
Okay, well, I guess my thoughts are it's trying to address quite a few things. Firstly, I've never seen in our profession membership bodies kind of talking to each other and collaborating, and I actually do see that as a positive, rather than everybody against each other. And I don't know what that's going to lead to. The framework feels a bit clunky at the moment, with sort of attaching UKCP and BPC to the end of the framework in category C, the way I see it. But I liked this idea of actually collaborating and talking together. And in the whole time I've been in the profession, this hasn't happened. But I do see that as a positive aim. However, I would like to see more voices being included, all stakeholders being included within that. And I'm not behind the scenes, so I don't know who's been included, who's not, but from seeing it from the outside perspective, I'm only seeing 3 membership bodies, and like I think it was Erin said, I think I'm only hearing from BACP, and I feel there's such a huge silence around the other 2 professional membership bodies. Which I don't think is okay, actually. I think they need to be communicating how they're feeling about this. I think it's also trying to address the confusion within our profession. And I actually feel there is a lot of confusion around titles. There's loads of titles, lots of school of thought, and lots of diversity within our training. And it is confusing to navigate what all of that means. And I think it's great. The diversity within our profession is great, but I think it is hard to understand from a perspective of a client, an employer, and a new person that's entering the profession to train. And also existing therapists and trainees, like where we actually fit in our profession and what it means for us individually. So I really welcome the project actually opening up a conversation about it. And I see it as an ongoing process of reflecting and consulting, and not putting us into boxes and a framework, actually allowing us to kind of breathe with this process, and allowing us to talk to one another to really get to grips with what we want. And I do think that's important. Whether the current framework addresses the aims, I think is a big question mark. I don't think it does at this stage. Is it meant to? Is it sold in that way? I'm not sure. But from an employer perspective, you know, I run a service, and I have been an employer myself, and I can really see putting therapists into 3 categories is only going to encourage employers to employ therapists from the B and C category. So what will happen to the A therapists? I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that they're going to be left to volunteer, or going to be thrown into private practice quite quickly, because there's not going to be any employment opportunities. In terms of clients, I feel there's going to be more confusion with 3 titles, rather than clarifying what it is that we're doing. And for trainees, I think it does help to have a pathway and an understanding, a start point and an end point. But again, I think there needs to be an honesty that if you're entering a category A, where is that going to leave you in terms of employment and opportunities going forwards?
Thanks a lot, Rima. Lots of points that you've made there. I think you said on Twitter recently that, you know, it was important for you to kind of just keep on reflecting on all of this. And that was really indicative in your answer, actually. And already we've heard a whole wide range of different views. But I love what you say about kind of feeling the need to breathe in all of this, because then when I hear your answer and everyone else's answer, oh goodness, there's a lot there, and that need to breathe feels so important. Who are we going to next? Emma.
Right. So the question is whether we think SCoPEd, what it's trying to solve, and I think the initial iteration, it did seem to be about demarcating between what a counsellor and a psychotherapist is and introducing some kind of hierarchy. So even though in this iteration they've taken away the titles, the A, B, and C is still a hierarchy that they seem to be introducing. But the fact is that if you wanted to demarcate that, you also, within that framework, have said level 4 is qualified. And qualified is qualified regardless. And I think if we go on that principle and look at other professions that work with clients or patients like doctors, once a doctor is qualified, they're qualified. And the only way to progress within the medical profession is through specialty training. But whether you have a master's that you do after you qualify as a doctor, or whether you have a PhD after you qualify as a doctor, you are still a doctor. To get to be a consultant, it's about experience and specialty training. And I think in a way that's where these organisations have missed a trick in a way of talking about, yes, we've got a training framework, yeah, I could have done that, you know, put together a table of all the different ways you could train to be a therapist, but that doesn't mean there's a hierarchy in therapy, because the person at the end of the day that is seen at level A, they're then saying, like, if we look at something like 1.12c, that somebody at level A is only capable at working as a team, but somebody at 1.12c can take an active role in the professional community, working locally and internationally, and, you know, they can impart professional knowledge and information. So what have I been doing when I've been at a webinar, you know, or giving a presentation? Does that mean that with this medium hierarchy, I won't be able to do that? Because I'll only be an A because I've only got a level 4. So that would always preclude me, even in employment, being able to give international presentations or giving my professional opinion. But my professional opinion comes from experience. It doesn't come from whether I did a level 7 or not. And I think it's just being very clear about what their intention is versus what they're actually achieving with that output, which I don't actually think they've done.
Okay, thanks a lot, Emma. Just to let you know, I sent you a private message as well. I'm not sure if it's your coverage or if it's your microphone. I could hear you, but you're just a little bit quiet, muffled. Okay. So I don't know whether anything can be done your end or not, but I just wanted to let you know. But just to go over, I mean, Emma was obviously talking there about the kind of what feels like a hierarchy to her, and, you know, whether that's really fair, particularly when we're not taking experience into account in that, and that if you're in a you know, column A, it wouldn't matter how much you're kind of doing in terms of, you know, CPDs and learning about very important stuff as a therapist, as well as building on your experience, that it would feel a bit like, you know, to the outside world that you were still level A. So yeah, let's move on. So lastly, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say much else about the sort of stated aims, because everyone else has sort of covered them so well, and particularly Jay's analysis of what stated aims are and whether they're, you know, important and useful and worthwhile. But for me, the framework does nothing potentially really to improve the field at all. Because behind these sort of stated aims, there's, I mean, I'm sure the people involved feel they're doing, you know, the right thing for the profession. This isn't a criticism of people and what they're doing. But somehow the way the dynamics of the situation come together is to kind of try, as if it's trying to resolve the power dynamics in the profession. And these power dynamics exist around a number of areas, you know, like title, like the other people have already mentioned, the counsellor psychotherapist, you know, it's like this age-old thing, you know, like who's better or is there a difference? The power dynamics between the organisations, which are really strange because BACP has a huge kind of membership, but other smaller organisations who occupy different places in the power hierarchy for reasons of history and therapeutic approach, seem to sort of have a kind of equal weight or even more weight somehow. And actually, these issues of modality, the power dynamics between modalities, you know, where psychoanalytic work has often been sort of positioned at the top. And I think we sort of come on to these issues a bit later. But to me, there's the sort of stated aims, and then there's the aims of the project at a sort of political level. Even if they're not sort of openly acknowledged, I don't know if the people in these meetings sort of planning these things actually talk about this stuff. But maybe they should, you know, maybe they should sort of explore what's going on at this level. You know, this is what we do, isn't it, as therapists, think through the sort of deeper aspects of things. Because the way that it's coming out now, the way it's been formulated, to me is a kind of betrayal, really, of the rich diversity of counselling and psychotherapy and therapeutic practice. And it seems strange, really, that therapists of all people, you know, would want to iron out complexity, yeah, to sort of like to make things simple and kind of put them into categories, so that they're more kind of accessible or something. I mean, I don't understand where that comes from for therapists, and especially to use such a blunt instrument as this kind of the methodology which is used to create this kind of competence frameworks, and the framework itself, you know, this kind of, here you are in your columns on a spreadsheet. You know, this seems to me sort of odds with therapeutic thinking, and I think someone said earlier about there seems to be an inability to think sort of critically, but also creatively, you know, about how we best sort of look after the work of counselling and psychotherapy. Because that's what this is about, isn't it? It's about how do we look after this special thing that we all do in different ways? But how do we take care of it? And I think there's a myth in SCoPEd that it's inevitable. Yeah, the thing has to happen. I mean, one of the people involved in BACP wrote that if we don't do scopes, then we sort of do nothing, or words to that effect. Which seems to me just like I don't know where that kind of narrowness of thinking comes from, you know. And it's just scoped. We should remember, however powerful the organisation involved seem, is just one way of understanding the field. It's one way of addressing the problems in the field, and it's one way of analysing what those problems are. And there are many, many other ways potentially we could do this, you know, that we can work together to take care of this work and look after not just its status and its legitimacy, but its heart, yeah, the sort of soul of the work. So yeah, if we're saying, is it solving the issues? I mean, you've got to say, well, what are the issues in the first place? You know, and do you take them, as Jay was saying, in good faith, or do you look below the surface a bit? Yeah, so I mean, I suppose that's where I am with that. I mean, it's a really tough question, isn't it? Like, is it solving it? Because it's, on what terms do you take that question? You know? So
yeah, absolutely. But you know, I guess what you said there, how do we look after this really special thing? How do we take care of it? I love that, and I guess that's why we're here today, isn't it? I'm going to invite you all to any further comments, anything you want to ask any of the panelists from what you've heard.
I think there was something Rima was saying about the level of consultation and how, for you, Rima, I think you were saying that it felt good that there was this kind of consultation between these bodies which were, you know, in conflict or certainly not speaking with each other in the past. But I think it's a very limited level of consultation, because it's a kind of a club who have set themselves up and excluded everyone else, and now they're talking about potentially talking to others. Again, that seems a very strange approach to me for therapists who are interested in open thinking and reflective thinking and open engagement with a range of views, you know, to sort of cut out the National Counselling Society, for example. I mean, I've got no interest in that personally. I'm not a member, I'm a BATP member, but why not talk to everyone from the start? You know, why? What's the answer? I
agree with that, and I think for me, this feels like a massive step in our profession to have collaboration. I've never, like I said, I've not seen it before, but yes, it needs to be a wider net. It needs to be everybody, all stakeholders, including clients and employers and training institutes. Everybody needs to be involved in this, so that we can get a real sense of what we're all thinking about it.
There was a lot of questions from therapists regarding who was involved with the SCoPE project. And I know that in the methodology paper, there is something that is written about that, which I think it might be important just to read out. Limiting the mapping of practice standards to the 3 collaborating organisations. This decision was made because the focus was on finding shared agreement between the 3 participating bodies. It also became clear that the task of extending this wider would have been even more complex, and there were difficulties about establishing which bodies to include and how to get reliable data. This was therefore agreed to be outside the scope of the project. However, the technical group and the expert reference group recognised the limitations this places on the published framework and recognised that this could be extended at a later date. So I just thought that was important to kind of put that in there, because I think it is acknowledged in the methodology paper that there is limitations to that.
Anyone got any thoughts on that?
Well, it shows you that how the methodology is sort of driving the project. You know, we decide on a methodology, and then that excludes things, and I'm really sorry that can't be included. Yeah. But it's the methodology. There's a kind of circularity to that, which again feels problematic to me.
I'm not sure I buy it in the sense that if it was me, you know, what would the instinctive thing be to include everybody that's got anything to do with counselling and psychotherapy under the PSA? Because like it or not, and I think some people don't like it, the PSA is, if you like, where the authority to become a recognised counsellor and psychotherapist lies. I mean, through the membership bodies, but you know, for credibility, they need to be a member of the PSA. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
so why not the? It seems obvious.
I agree with you, Jack. I mean, the PSA is the obvious sort of thing, isn't it, to look at all the PSA accredited registers? And I think what it doesn't do is give a rationale for including BPC and UKCP over the other bodies. So I think it's, you know, I think if they're going to say, you know, this is a rationale for excluding X, Y, and Z, they also need to give the rationale for who was included.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. That's a really important point. For anyone who's